Today we're talking about three specific ideas. One being setting boundaries of honor, the second being the importance of praying fervently, and the third, service as stewardship of the glory of God. And this is something that came from a sermon that I was listening to, which I really enjoyed. And again, I am coming at this from an agnostic point of view. I like to remind folks of that because even though I do really enjoy the spiritual imagery and lessons that we could get from theology or from the Bible, I also understand there's a lot of different ways of looking at the world and a lot of different perspectives on life that we can get value from. So I wouldn't want to make it appear that I'm trying to be preachy or trying to push, one particular narrative over another. But as I was listening to this sermon, I thought about the importance of setting boundaries. And in the context of Christianity, it would be about doing things which are spiritually edifying, doing things which are honorable to God, if you will, and then understanding what to do when you encounter other people who don't share those values. And for me, that really hits home because there's so many times when you think to yourself that you want to be a different person than the person you were before. You want to turn a new leaf. You want to kind of turn the page. And yet people always want you to stay in a holding pattern. They don't want you to grow in a way which is going to make you no longer validate their positions. And so boundaries become really important. And that doesn't mean that you want to shut people out of your life. But if you want to start focusing on being more mindful, you want to focus on being more loving, you want to be more peaceful, you want to be less of a gossiper, you want to be less about comparing yourself to others, you want to focus less on negativity as a form of entertainment, you want to have fewer things in your life that are basically idols, things that you worship as, a way to maybe play God or, get into it and then evangelize it. It could be politics and cryptocurrency, whatever it is, it's all those things where it's not a healthy relationship with a specific topic or with a specific person. It's, cults of personality. It's all of those things which make you wind up being in the sphere of influence of other people. And then you're less likely to be true to what you feel is spiritually uplifting and edifying and honorable as a whole. It's really important to be able to say, you know what, I am not going to be part of that conversation. I'm going to remove myself completely. And, we're just not going to talk about certain things. And if that means that, text message strings go quiet and people don't pick up the phone and call anymore, and you're going to be alone in a way, a little bit more than maybe you would like to be, or you're going to have some people who were part of your life, and then suddenly it's not that they, have a huge falling out, it's just they're not really there anymore because the things you like to do don't really appeal to them anymore. Well, let it be what it is. It's okay to have boundaries and then pay the price of having some people who are going to be a little bit more distant with you, or they're just not going to be part of your daily life in the same way as they were before. And that's one reason why I think being able to move away and walk away from certain situations is really good. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something dramatic like saying I'm going to go move away and relocate across the country. It could be something more simple, just like you don't go to certain places that you used to go, or you don't hang out with certain people who you used to hang out with. And I'm reminded of Warren Buffett's advice. I think it was Warren Buffett, could be wrong, but it's gone around quite often, that you should surround yourself with people who you want to be more like, and then you're going to drift in their direction. And I find that to be very much true. When you don't surround yourself with people who you admire and people who share the values that you want to have, the mindset you want to have, then you're essentially unequally yoked with unbelievers. You know, you've got the one ox that's trying to go one way and you got the other one that's going the other way. And maybe they're all chained up in the same fixture to the same ox cart, but at the end of the day, no one's going anywhere, because if you try to make changes in your life, it only lasts for as long as, you know, you're not around those bad influences, but you're always around the bad influences. So you never really actually change. You just talk about changing, but it's always theoretical, because you can't really shake off all of the people in your life who are dampening your capacity to evolve. Anyways, that's important. Setting boundaries. It sounds simple, but it's always easier said than done. So I think it's worth mentioning. Another thing that really stood out to me is this notion of praying fervently. And, you know, you might be thinking to yourself, well, what does that mean for me if I'm not really a person who prays? Like, I'm not worshiping a deity. I'm not going to be, you know, on my knees praying to God because I'm an agnostic, or I don't believe, and that's fine. But really, what I wanted to focus in on is this notion of fervent, the word fervent. And you might ask, well, what does fervent really mean? You know, does it mean like you're really concentrating on it super hard, or does it mean that you're extremely strenuous in your behaviors, or what does fervent mean? Well, I think at the core of what it should mean is that fervency has to go hand in hand with absolute belief in the mission at hand. Somebody said that when you are practicing sword play, you're going to go fight with a sword. And this one could be a little bit of a gaming reference too, because I don't know how many RPGs there are which don't involve having some sort of a sword that you're probably wielding. If you are going to be successful, it's not just about having, you know, an authoritative device. It's not about having just a sharp sword. It's not just about having the quality there. I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't matter, but a big part of what really matters is conviction. Because you might have authority to wield the sword, and you might have a really good sword, but if you don't have conviction to absolutely, without hesitation, know that what you're doing is what you want to be doing, then you're going to always have that doubt guiding your actions, and it's going to create latency and hesitation, and it's going to prevent you from being able to act in the way that's going to lead to a true victory. It's kind of like people with guns, for example. You know, if you are a person who doesn't have the confidence that you would be able to operate a firearm without hesitation, and you would not feel comfortable with it, and you would probably, you know, just hesitate, well, then it's very possible that that kind of a person, if they get a firearm, they would have it, but they're not really trained in the right way. And then in an emergency situation, if they had to defend themselves or their family or something like that, there's probably a pretty good possibility that they would actually wind up losing control of the weapon, and maybe the home invader or something would get a hold of it. Or they would just not be successful because they would hesitate in a moment when you really can't hesitate. And that's really what fervency brings to mind when I think about it. The question is, do we believe in what we're doing enough to say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm about, this is my life, and then we don't question, right? It's kind of unconditional. It's not to say you can never change your path, you can never change your course, you can never reconsider things, but you've got to commit in a way that makes it so that you can focus on decisively swinging that sword instead of always checking to see if there's a better sword, or checking to see if you actually want to, to swing it. Like, you can't be hesitating, and the hesitation, the lack of true conviction to know that what you're doing is actually what you truly want to do. When you're in that mode of saying, well, I'm kind of here, but I'm also kind of waiting to see if there's something else that maybe I could do that would be, more expedient. Or you say, I want to stand for a certain set of values, but, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, and I don't want to change my life in any way, and I don't want to change my routines in any way, and I don't want to leave my comfort zone. Well, then it's going to be a thing where, maybe you're praying in the sense that there's things that you want, things you're asking for, things you're seeking, right? But are you really doing it fervently in the sense that you're backing up the prayers with actual mindful, intentional action? And that's something I think we can all put into practice. Stop talking about it and then start doing it. It's like being a person who's angry at, it's like being angry at at the store because they didn't lock up stuff. And then you say, it's your fault. You didn't lock up the stuff, and now I'm a thief. Well, no, you're a thief because you're a thief and you lack conviction. And when you're surrounded by something that you could steal, you're likely to steal it. It has nothing to do with the fact that the merchant didn't chain it up. It has everything to do with you. And that's where it's not enough to say, I want to be a good person, or I want to take a different path. You have to actually believe in it enough to say, I'm not just going to say I would like my life to be different. I'm going to actually do something that's going to make my life different. And there's a lot of people who say they want a specific career too. I've seen that. Like, well, I want to do this or that, and maybe they're a person who wants to be, say, a manager at an executive level or something like that. And it's just, an entry level employee who's saying these things, who's asking, like, how can I be a manager? Well, okay, that's fine that you say you want to be a manager, but when I look at it from the perspective of someone who's been, say, with my company for a while, I would probably also immediately kind of start to ask myself, do you really want that, or do you just think it sounds good? Kind of like when I was a teenager and I said I want to be a airplane pilot because that would be so cool. Well, I didn't know the first thing about what it means to be an airline pilot. And I didn't really want to be an airline pilot. I just thought it was cool that day, right? And the reality is I didn't have any true fervor. I had interest. I didn't have fervor. Because fervor is what's going to make you say, you know what, I'm going to, go to school for 8 years, and I'm going to sacrifice, and I'm going to do everything I have to do to work on myself so that I can become the person that's able to pursue my dreams. But usually in life, we say we want things, but we don't really want them enough to actually change our actions in order to change our life. And then finally, lastly, I wanted to talk about this notion of being a steward of the glory of God. And I think about how, my interpretation of God is the sum of all things, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. God is not really a deity, a person sitting out there on a great white throne. God is this great esoteric idea of the sum of everything. And when you start talking about God in that way, when we talk about service to God, that really is just another term for harmony, for being one with the way of the universe, the way of all things, the harmony of everything in nature, to find peace in life, and to live our lives in a way which honor other people in our lives and help everyone, all of us as a common human species, to ask those philosophical questions and to follow a path of peace and discovering our identity and all of those things in the experience that we have in life, to live our lives as part of something higher and greater than ourselves. But when you talk about service to God, a lot of people, probably especially the Christians out there, would tend to serve God in the sense of doing specific things that they think are indicative of service to God. And a lot of those people would also be very much inclined to make everything about themselves. They're very materialistic people in reality, while they present the facade of being very spiritual people. And when we talk about service as a stewardship of the glory of God, that's important because it puts into perspective the fact that we don't do the things we do so that we can look better for our own benefit. We do it so that we can pay tribute to something higher and more noble than ourselves, something which we don't even really have words to describe or a capacity to fully understand. That is, after all, what God is. It's a word for all the things there really is no word for. All the things we don't have a capacity to understand or explain. All the things we do and all the things we don't. But when you start talking about life as service and service as a way to be a steward of a glory which is not your own, then you start to ask the question, why am I serving? Am I serving in a way that is humble and gracious? Am I serving in a way which honors others? Or am I serving in a way which honors myself? And if you're serving yourself and you're just appearing to do good because you feel like it's going to make you look better, or it's going to make you have extra credit points with God, or it's going to somehow be about you, well, it's not. And that's not true service. True service is a stewardship. It's to say, I am just here as a temporary vessel. I'm here to be a light, a shining light in the world, and then I will hopefully leave it better than I found it. But ultimately, it really isn't about me. And that leads to a place of generosity. It leads to an attitude of genuine care and concern and empathy and a lot of things which are very difficult to do if you're pretending to do them and you're trying to have a procedure for how to do them. But it's not very hard at all when you actually are doing the things you're doing in a way that comes genuinely and purely from a spirit of stewardship and honor, instead of a place of selfishness and narcissism and all of those things that say, I want to do what's right, but I also really want to make sure I get ahead and I am number one. So to recap, to be selfless as stewards of something greater than ourselves, to be fervent, to act with conviction, to be willing to back up our dreams and our goals with actual acts and true sacrifices, and to be a person who is willing to break ties with things that are not conducive to your growth and to spiritual wholeness. To be able to say, you know what, I'm not going to do certain things because I just can't have room for darkness and light in the same space. You know, there's things I don't do anymore, and I don't like videos I don't watch and creators I don't watch anymore and stuff I just don't really spend my time doing. It's not because it's even bad in any way. It's just because I don't have time to do everything. I can't play every single game that was ever made. I can't watch every video that was ever made. I can't consume all content that was ever made. So I have to pick, what is it that I really value? What is it that it's going to be edifying and spiritually uplifting? What is it that's going to help me to be more on a path of love and wisdom and truth, and less on a path of ego and idolatry and obsession and all of those lesser things which tend to prevent peace in our lives. Always attract yourself to the things which bear good fruit in your life. And if there's stuff in your life that just isn't really healthy, and the more you think about it, the more you pretty much just know, this isn't exactly doing good in my life, don't keep it around. Just let it go, because you might have to give up some people and some things, but it's worth it in the end if you can live a life that is genuine and that is true and that is guided by a spirit of love and a love for the truth. As always, wherever you find yourself, good luck on your adventure. Till next time. Thanks so much.